Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Essen coming to you live again about the AO scan. Today, what I wanted to talk about was the idea of languaging for the AO scan. How does one talk about the AO scan? What's going on in the internal mechanisms? How you describe or promote or even understand yourself? What's happening as you see all these things happening on the screen? All of this is in my opinion. All of this is something that then would be not necessarily be correlated with what the people at AOScan headquarters would say. This is just my opinion and insights as to how I see it and how I talk to people about it on a day-to-day basis as I'm doing testing. So starting off, we're looking at maybe the inner voice program. How do we talk about the inner voice program? In this case, you're looking at the idea of a recorded video aspect. So what we want to do is hit the start record button. When we hit the start record button, we have that upper left corner thing. We say start here. So as someone is speaking about, they're basically, they're thinking in their heads, here's what's going on with my health, but they're saying my name is, my address is, my phone number is, my email is, I drive this kind of car, there's a park down the street, my life is 9 to 5 on a Monday through Friday basis, and blah, 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 blah. So this is recording their voice so as to get basic fundamentals of the subliminal context to what's in their mind, their emotions, their neurological matrix as they're speaking. Their voice sort of betraying things that are off balance. So we're working with Mr. John Doe here. You can see in the upper corner here, I'm the technician. What we want to see is the distinction between highs and lows. And there's beautiful distinctions here between highs and lows. So we accept this. We say, yes, this is what we want to see, because these are the things that are farthest out of balance in terms of mental emotional patterns. First page of our report talks about what's going on in the report. This is a fairly good description if you want to give it to people and say, here's what's happening behind the scenes. And then we have our 4 different mental emotional states. We email those to somebody. That email goes out and says, hey, you have these reports, but more importantly, then here are the things that are the 4 what you call off balance things. These are the 4 mental emotional states that are least adaptive, that are most off balance when stress is incurred. So now we have success in saying that. So you tell people now, just again, probably do want to listen to them a couple times a day. Real simple. The languaging behind this that I use is we're simply taking those things that are less adaptive, less able to work with stress or pressure or changes, and we're going to try to move them to a place where they're more responsive, more capable, more able to use a rational mind to work with whatever stressor is going on. So in that case, that's a fairly easy languaging set to work with. Now we're going to go to the vital scan. This is where headphones are required. So we're going to go ahead and do a scan on John Doe here. This is the relatively fast version of this. This can kind of go zippity-doo. And so we just want to talk about what is happening here. In this system, every tissue, every cell, every process, every chemical in the body has been broken down to be a number, a wave frequency, a Hertz cycle. Then that vibratory signal represented by a number is being input into the nervous system. So we throw the number 85.72 into the system. 87.52 goes into the system, and the system says, oh, you're asking about 87.52. If 87.52 comes back exactly the same, we get a normal score. If something comes back instead of 87.52, we get an 84 or an 89, these scores are off balance. These are things that are either under functional and not working well enough, in the case of a low score, or what we see as the blue ovals, or something that is very excited, something that's a little bit urgent, crisis-oriented, inflammation, infection, and so on. And in this case, we get our red ovals. So all this is a query. Send in a frequency. Do you get the same frequency back or not? It's just that simple. So we can see here, we've got some blue ovals over here, and then we've got a red oval here in there. So we look at this and say, well, this is a set that's interesting. And we have over here in the previous scan, we have a whole lot more. Now what we're going to do is frequency optimization. And by the way, any one of these is recorded and worked with in terms of our PDF file that we've got for everyone that has each one of these things described in detail and how one would describe it from a definition standpoint. What does each one of these mean? We provide that information when somebody is working with us in our system. So all these things are described. So any one of these ovals, we can look it up and say, it means this, okay? Now, then we do the frequency optimization. Remember that we had a number, and that number represented this body system. And if it came back different than what normal is, either on the low side where it's an underfunctional thing, or on the high side where this is something that's rather hyperactive, a little bit overstressed, we can then take that number and invert it. In other words, we gave the example of 84 as a positive number before that came back a little bit off. What if we did as a positive 84? What if we put a negative 84 in there? What does that do? It cancels it out. So a positive, negative of the same value cancel each other out. So what we're doing is we're taking vibratory signals, inverting them, and putting them back into the body. Now that tells the nervous system, wait a minute, you've got this communication wrong. There's something incorrect about this information flow, the electricity, the chemistry, something's a little bit off. And very much like flipping a switch, you can immediately turn on a light. This is where you can get pretty strong responses that would then be able to say, okay, now we understand better. Now we get it that this frequency represents this. And now that we put the opposite in, it's become corrected. And now we can operate within normal parameters. So the frequency optimization is about the idea of correction of information flow. And so many difficulties in our bodies, so many disease processes and other symptoms are nothing more than the process of poor communication. So let's go ahead, go through this frequency optimization every time we do this testing so that we have the opportunity to take those miscues and then just correct them by, again, sort of flipping a switch or providing that little piece of information that's going to allow the system to correct itself. Just that simple. It can be pretty profound. We can get very strong, nice responses. We can radically reduce the number of things that are off in the body, allowing us to focus on those things that don't correct. What doesn't correct? Things that aren't just information problems, things that are more chemical, more biomechanical, toxins that are more unable to be moved by frequency alone. So you can see here, over previous scan we used to have was a lot of reds and blues. Now they're refined down to a smaller number of them. So on any one of these panels, we get a lesser and lesser grouping. So all of what we've done is we've corrected previous imbalances. We've taken things that were off balance and now they're balanced. But here, for example, in leucine, we had a deficiency before, we still have a deficiency now. Now down here, we did not note a difference in valine, but upon second review, the system found something that was a little bit off. This is nothing more than a refined, more precise, narrowed down set of information that we've gained by virtue of doing that frequency analysis. So this isn't necessarily that we always get less, most of the time we do, but it's the more accurate, more refined, more reliable point of view when it comes to some of this stuff. So again, we email this report out and we take a look at it. This is where we're making our decisions as to what we're going to work with in terms of the comprehensives, which of course, that's what we're going to go to next. Those comprehensives are now our opportunity to take a look at what parts of the body do we want to pay attention to. This can either be based on what we found in the baseline vital score, or we can also base this on the idea of where are the patient's symptoms? Where might we find there to be some problems? So let's take a look for John Doe. Let's look at the nerves of his brain. Let's take a look at the adrenal glands. Let's take a look at the stomach and small intestine. Now, I'm doing just a few of these, just for the sake of brevity of this example here. But this oftentimes either hit the intelligent scan selection, add a few more that you think are relevant, or just go through and click on potentially a lot of them. I usually limit it to about 12 to 15 things to look at. So we're going to hit the scan. We're going to scan through these 4 items. We're going to see if we get any kind of scores that are off. Now, instead of just the low, normal, and high, or that underfunctional, normal, and hyperactive, we're now going to be in a scale from 1 to 9. And so this isn't any different in terms of the concept that the middle range is normal. It's just that we're getting a little bit more precise about this. And again, no difference here. Every anatomical piece of the body has been broken down and denoted in a database to be represented by a number. The number goes into the nervous system. Does it come back as normal? So we're getting simply a precise measurement from 1 to 9. Here's what's on. Here's where we are in terms of status of a frequency being input and then coming back as either normal or not. So we're looking for the 1s and 9s. 1s and 9s are where we have difficulties. 1s and 9s are where we have problems that say it's either extremely low function or extremely excited about what's going on in terms of situation. So we do these reviews so that we get an idea of the system in crisis the most. This allows us to also get a better idea of what's happening where it comes to what we want to work with in the next phase, which is called the analyze phase. So again, no difference here. We're simply doing the scan. We're just trying to understand what's our status quo. Again, it's just nothing more than an input of a number and getting the number back either as same number or different number. We then put that where all we're doing is putting on a scale of measurement. So we can see here, we've got the stomach as quite normal. Adrenals kind of in the middle. There's some 3s and some 7s, but it's not that bad. We look at the small intestine. We have a score of 1 in the mucosa. That means the mucosa is underfunctional, probably in this case too thin. We don't have enough mucus to separate the food from the villi of the lining. Villi aren't in the best shape either, so the small intestine is a candidate here. We take a look at nerves of the brain. We have a 1 in the cuneate, which is, again, sort of in that idea of the brain stem, may have something to do with cervical spinal health, and the lateral ventricle here too, which would indicate something about maybe balance and so on. Now let's take a look at those after frequency optimization. And here, frequency optimization is nothing different than we did in the vital scan. It's taking scores that were off, inverting them, putting them back into the body, and see if flipping a switch corrects our score. So if we have a -5 and we add a +5, we get 0. We're looking to do that. And when you invert a frequency and put an opposite wave in, it can cancel out the wave that was off balance. So all the scores and all those anatomical charts are now having inverted waves put in wherever there was an imbalanced score. The question is, will this correct the imbalance? Or in the case of those things that aren't going to move, those scores that don't correct, then we have an idea that whatever's going on there is more physical, more tangible, harder to move. It isn't just a miscommunication. It's something that's a little bit more capable of causing symptoms over a longer time. So we're simply trying to do this idea of narrowing the field. We knew that there was a problem here. Let's see what we can correct. What remains to be corrected will be what we work with down the line here. So just about finished up. And there we go. So what's still off? Small intestine actually got much better. Stomach actually got a little bit worse than it had been. Adrenals remained about the same, and nerves of the brain got better. Now, if we're going to make a choice out of this, what are we going to work with? Well, what does this patient have as a set of symptoms? Do they have neurological problems? Do they have adrenal problems? Do they have stomach problems? Any one of these could be something that we pay attention to simply because we don't have a red one. And this will happen in many instances where the frequency correction does so well that we don't have anything that's so hard to move that we couldn't move it. But let's go just for example, let's see here. Who's farthest off balance still remaining? Because let's go with the brain, just because it's more fun. So then we go to the analyze. Now, analyze is going to give us our list of here's what we would look at from the standpoint of correction. This is our set of lists that would have the ability to define what nutrition or other support is going to be beneficial for this particular set of tissues. So John Doe's brains and nerve are what we're measuring. We can see that up here. Let's go to the brain and nerve list. So now what's going to happen when we click the analysis button is it's going to take every product that has been scanned into the software and it's going to compare it to the scores that were off. It's going to give us an idea of, okay, now that we have the target to shoot at, brains of the nerve, and the scores that were on that panel, we're trying to compare every single remedy within a brain and nerve list. All of these are products that were put together from all the product lines that that Whole Life Clinic works with, and we're comparing them back to the brain. In other words, if our frequency was off, how do we correct the frequency? We're not, again, these things that are being scanned are represented in the software as a frequency. So if you have that -5, instead of frequency optimization providing the +5, it's the product that's producing the +5. Still trying to cancel it out so we get our score somewhere near to that 4, 5, or 6 in that numerical range. So this is really just very simple. Everything about this is doing the same thing. In the vital scan, we had blue ovals, green ovals, red ovals. If we had a blue or a red, we put in a frequency optimization trying to bring it back towards normal range. In the comprehensives, we had a few pieces of anatomy that had some scores that were off. We do the frequency optimization to try to bring it back in range. For that which did not yet come all the way as far as we wanted it to, we're using the products to bring it back into range. We're trying to find that balanced score, because if we keep on providing the body with opportunities to find balance and proper function within these different tissues and systems and processes in the body and do the correction on a routine basis, we're going to end up having that person have achieved better health. And that's ultimately, of course, our goal for everything that we're going to do. Different products here come from different companies. We did not necessarily emphasize or highlight any one particular company where it came to any particular list. If it's a list that has to do with the body process, a body anatomical part, nutrition, and so on. There are some lists that we built that were just company specific if you wanted to work with only one company, which is fine. But each remedy is represented, again, nothing different than a database of numbers, and then numbers get input and then numbers get received back, and does that balance or not? That's all we're really looking to see here. So we're kind of getting towards the end of the brain and nerve list. And what we're going to see is a set of numbers. So here, Clear Mind, using this example, is on the scan assessment bar. This is the amount of benefit gained for the nerves of the brain by using this product. So 100% benefit from using Clear Mind. But here, the body stress, also expressed as a percentage, is any kind of reaction that the body might have. A digestive difficulty, an immune reaction, a excretion problem, some peripheral system that might have some issues by using this. So a 100 is a good score. A 58, though, is a rather high amount of body stress to use something, because really what we have is a net 42. So a 42% isn't exactly what I would want to see from a remedy that somebody's going to use. That last bar, the conclusion, is on that scale from 1 to 9, where 5 is ideal. It brings us to a 5. Now, what we can say about that is we still achieve a 5. We have 100% benefit. We still achieve a 5. Maybe we're willing to put up with that 58% if it's going to help us reach our goal. So let's check out the other ones. The CNSE Medics, which is stem cell stimulation for the brain. Now this is a little bit better, 100% and 42, so that's a 58% benefit. And the Curcum RX, which is a turmeric-based anti-inflammatory, about the same score there. So nothing's all that fantastic here, but we do get the idea that there's a slight difference in scores. Generally, I like to see above 60% net to really consider the use of something, because we can find something else if we really wanted to. Now, where it comes to, well, what about food? What about somebody's lifestyle? Let's come down here to our referrals list and diet. So let's see which kind of diet might be good for John Doe's nerves in his brain. Now, again, what we're trying to do here is give somebody tools to work with a whole lifestyle of choices, not to supplement everything away. Now, in this case, what could we do diet-wise? Well, we're going to find out here in a little bit. we've gone through and kind of taken all the current diet trends and past diet trends, just trying to understand which ones are going to be for, at least a fixative property, maybe not necessarily a long-term diet, but what can we do from a standpoint of diet that's going to move us to a place where we're therapeutic, in this case for the nerves of the brain. Again, these diets are stored in the software as a Hertz cycle frequency. The frequency goes out to the body. The body says, this balances me or not in nerves of the brain. So again, it's not any different for a list like this than it is for a list of supplements or the frequency optimization. All we're trying to do is move the numbers toward that middle ground of 5 as much as we possibly can. And just about finished here. Oh, forgot the intermittent fasting. So eat right for your type B blood, eat right for your type O blood, and then gluten-free. Now look at the difference between these. Now a B diet, we talk about macro categories of things. B, especially for the meats, is important. There you're looking at sort of greasy meats, dark meat, poultry, pork, goat, lamb, things like this. Has a 130, so a net 70. So that's pretty good. But type O is more the red meats. So beef, the kind of wild game meats and things like this. Type O did very well. That's a net 94. Now gluten-free is pretty good too. That's a 78%. So somebody could go type O diet and not eat any grains. Between those two, they're pretty good. And on some days of the week, go with the type B kind of meats. So in other words, this person's not going to do very much chicken or poultry or fish. They're going to stick to more of the darker, heavier meats. That's a way of deciding based on frequency that frequency of that diet is better for nerves of the brain than other diets are. Just that simple. And everybody is, of course, bio-individual. And this isn't necessarily their long-term forever diet. This could be what it takes to fix nerves of the brain and maybe move to a different diet later. We're also going to take a look at the referrals list down here and see if any body work things would work. Is there a practitioner who could perhaps help with the nerves of the brain? Now, in this case, we put all the different modalities that we can think of, and I'm sure there are more, on different kinds of ways that we could work with somebody manipulating this body. Now, again, this kind of practice stored in the software is nothing more than a frequency compared back to the body. We keep on repeating the same thing. So the language about this is, in essence, really the idea of a central concept. Everything in the software is a frequency. The frequency goes into the brain, and the brain assesses that frequency as to how it changes the reaction of what's being tested. So what's being tested? Nerves of the brain. Every frequency that goes in is being sort of scanned through the needs of nerves of the brain. And then we take a look at what is the result at the end of that. So we're always just trying to move everything towards the middle. We're always just using a frequency to cause the biofeedback mechanism to happen. Just about finished here. All right, so in this case, this person, John Doe, could do some Rolfing, which is a very vigorous deep tissue massage. Huge benefit gained from doing that. Shamanic extraction, a fair amount of benefit, 54%, and total tension release, which is a specialized kind of chiropractic practiced by Dr. Michael Stern. And that he has a few students around the country that could also do this, but he is the principal practitioner of it. So we have huge benefit from 3 very different kinds of things: a kind of chiropractic, a very deep tissue massage, and then working with somebody in the shamanic realm to work with dispersing negative energies, let's phrase it that way. Now we get our ideas about what to do. We're going to write all these down. We're going to come up with a program for somebody that would say, here are the things that scored the best as we went through. We usually do many more lists than this. We include many more things than this, trying to keep it brief for the sake of the presentation. So we then write all these things down as to here's your set based on the best scoring items or diets or processes that you want to do. Now, our next step in the process is to go to the database. The database takes the vital scan idea and says, well, wait a minute, For the vital scan, we had a limited set. In this case, when we look at the database, it has a gigantically large number, much more so than the vital scan, of possible causal factors to what's going on. All the possible causal factor categories are over here. So I've clicked all of these, and then I'm going to click select all over here. Now I typically take out insect bites. Insect bites are very seldom somebody's problem where it comes to this thing, but sometimes they are, so I keep them in sometimes. We then click Analyze Database. Again, there's nothing any different about doing this. Every one of these causal factors stored in the database is being compared to each one of these lists, each one of the items in the list on the left. It's a frequency. The frequency goes out to the body, and body says, oh, is this a causal factor or not? Now we're going to get a rating on these things, and this will go pretty fast. But when we get these ratings out there based on the idea of something called the status, a percent, and time. So each thing that comes up, the status is this high or low cause? High meaning that this is a very exciting, very dominant kind of causal factor, versus a low status is something that's sort of a long-term, more casual, more persistent, but less urgent kind of idea. The percent equals the percentage of contribution to the overall problem. The higher the percentage, the more contribution it has toward the problem. The thing that I look at the most, the thing that I consider most important in this, is the time. Time is represented here in the number of years. The number of years is the designation as to how much more time will it be before this issue gets to the next level of pathology. How long before this gets worse? So this is expressing a level of urgency or time pressure about how quickly do we need to work on whatever's going on here. Now, in that case, the lower the number of years, the worse the problem would be, because it's more urgent. It's going to become worse sooner. So 1 year is far more urgent than a 5-year problem would be. So we want to take a look at these things and kind of get an idea of, as a frequency ID on something that would say, here's what the problem is. We're going to really need to take a strong look at this and say, well, which one is most urgent? So let's grab a report here. It generates it as a PDF in your Windows. And how I look at these, I get a little bump up here as far as magnification goes, it's like this. We have red, blue, and green. Now I'm concerned with causality, what is behind the problem. Green has to do with symptoms. Symptoms are often a wild goose chase. Trends is how things are moving from one place to another, but not necessarily talking as much about actual causal factor. So really I only look at the red ones. Now, where the red ones are concerned, I try to look at those that are 1 or 2 years as the most significant ones to consider. And so in this case, there's an emotional conflict at 3 years, probably not our immediate idea to pay attention to. Now, Mobius syndrome, I have no idea what that is. Most of the things in here that you'll see that have names you don't recognize, they need to be looked up on Google. We don't have the possibility of giving you every answer for every one of these because most of them are very obscure diagnoses. Mustard spice is a problem, and mucorrhesposis is a 1-year issue. Now here, we take a look at it, and that 1-year item, that's probably something that you could strongly consider. This person may have a mold infection. We go to the adrenals. Now here's our longer list. Up here at 5 years, 4 years, don't even bother looking at them. Come down here to the 2 and 1 years, we have a virus, we have a miasm, we have the pathology, gastroenteritis, or inflammation or dysfunction within the stomach. We have another miasm, which are 2 different ones, but similar. And then we have the phenolics of cinnamic acid. So again, we take a look at these. Now, when people see these, we often get questions. I don't have syphilis. I don't have gonorrhea. Okay, these are miasms. First thing we need to understand is that a homeopathic miasm is your ancestor had syphilis or gonorrhea or tuberculosis. It is not you who has the actual infection, but that person who had it in their past had it profoundly enough that it changed their chromosomes, and as they had children, those children inherited the change in the chromosomal pattern. And so then they would be prone to different disease processes. So that's what a miasm is not actually having the disease. And we have to say this over and over and over again to people. No, you don't have gonorrhea. No, you don't have syphilis, but somebody in your ancestry did, which going back not too far, that was pretty common. The other thing to take a look at is, things that are these diagnoses. You go into this, adenocarcinoma of the pancreas. Does somebody actually have that? No. In 4 years' time, if nothing changed between now and 4 years, adenocarcinoma of the pancreas would begin to happen. So this is not a diagnosis. This is not saying that you'll die in 4 years from adenocarcinoma of the pancreas. It is simply the idea that we need to move the 1, 2, 3-year things out of the way so that we can get back to the point where now that adenocarcinoma won't even appear because we've dealt with the other items. We work our way from the smaller numbers of years to the larger number of years. So small intestine wall here, we get this whole idea that, Pyrogenium A. So this is a bacteria, low cause, not a big deal. Rickettsia, Lyme cofactor, 2 years. We'd want to pay attention to that. By the time we get to this, whatever that is, as a high cause at 4 years, taking care of these items down here will make this go away. So this is just our list of getting a little bit more specific, and how I use it myself is to find out, does my mind change based on the things that we had previously done? I had given this person a list of product to use, a list of different diets or exercises, other things to use. Now, in that case, does any of this change my mind, add something new, or subtract anything from what I had already done? I don't generally necessarily send people home with this information because most of this ends up simply asking a bunch of questions that don't need to be asked. Most of the things, except the 1 and 2 years, are not relative to that person's long-term health so long as they continue on the path of working with diet, nutrition, exercise, hydration, and so on. Most of these things will disappear well before the number of years allotted. So that's just a little languaging around that. So we just have to be real careful to understand is that this is not a diagnosis page. This is not a definitive you have this. This is more an idea of let's go looking for this, let's take care of this. And again, does this change our mind about anything that we've encountered so far? So again, we go back here, and we go back, and then we email the report out to somebody. So in that case, we just take a look at this and say, here's things that we need to work with language-wise so that we better understand and that the person who's getting the scan better understands what's happening behind the scenes in the software. So that's kind of the what I wanted to get to you today so that you can better understand how to work with the AO scan. If you have a remote unit and you're working with Whole Life Clinic, we provide you with a ton of information and support. We provide you with the lists of products so that you can then go ahead and have a more comprehensive health picture for your patient, for your client, for friends, for family. Hope that answers your questions. Hope that gets you to a place where you're pretty confident in how to do this. And I wish you luck. And if you have any questions, always let us know at Whole Life Clinic. Thanks.